If you're new to my channel, welcome. If you've been with me for a while, welcome back. In this tutorial, I'm going to show and teach you guys how to make a Christmas card from scratch using watercolor paints. Really focus on setting up your workspace. Get the paper taped down, jars filled with water for your brushes, your masking fluid out, and use that to whiten areas of your painting. I'm using a picture that I got off of a website called Pexels, which has uncopyrighted images. And I'm going to customize it. Instead of making them red ornaments, I'm going to change their colors for reasons which I'll explain later. Another way I'm customizing this image is I'm changing the size of the ornaments. I want them to actually be close in size. Before you start painting, you want to wet the area that you're going to paint first. With watercolor, you want to keep the paper wet, and also you want to build in multiple layers from very light to very bold. I changed the colors of the ornaments because I want them to represent members of my family. My brother and his wife, my sister-in-law, they live way down south, very far away, and they have 4 children, one of which is a 6-year-old girl, and they have 3 triplet daughters. And I carefully selected the colors according to how they tell them apart. So I was very conscious of what colors I wanted to make each ornament, and I wanted the hands to represent, parents holding their loved ones close. I've never made a Christmas card before, so I'm really hoping this turns out well. To get the hang of watercolor quickly, always be mindful to wet the paper first before you start painting. Every single time. And if you want to control how the paint lies on the paper, consider your paint and water ratios. More paint than water and you'll have more control. Less paint and more water and you'll have less control. But with watercolor, I think you really want more water than paint, depending on what you're producing. You want it to have a very watercolory effect. As you can see, I'm being very mindful that ornaments are light reflective. They have a lot of shadows around the edges and highlights, and I'm being very general about where I put these shadows and highlights. I'm not trying to agonize too much over getting things perfect, You can do that, but I choose to be a bit more free-handed and freestyling in my watercolor painting approach. I want my art pieces to actually look like art pieces, not exact replicas of something else that's already out there. So here I am being mindful to put the shadows closer to the edges where there are more shadows, and being a little bit playful in where I put the shadowy shapes within the area of the ornament. Once you master where your lights and dark shades and shadows go, you will be amazed at how much that brings it all to life. You also want to be mindful of being selective with the types of brushes that you use. I'm using a lot of round brushes, but you'll see that I change up a lot the size of my brush and the shape of the bristles to achieve a certain effect, a certain shape. Deciding what brush to use next will eventually become second nature. Another tip, you want to make sure to wet your paper in sections, not just the whole paper in the beginning, because then it will dry too fast and things will not go smoothly. It helps to wet in sections like I'm doing here, and it will also help you to organize your painting and composition and make it less overwhelming in the process. For mixing the flesh tones, I will link below the colors that I used, but I pretty much stuck to a minimal color palette. I mixed an orange and pinks and burnt sienna with white and other darker colors like burnt umber and dark umber and Payne's gray to create the shadows around the ornaments. Now you're starting to see that everything is taking shape and really looking three-dimensional. With watercolor, I don't like to incorporate a lot of detail like I do with maybe my pencil drawings or other mediums I use. This is a perfect medium to be more suggestive with detail and not so realistic that it just overkills, you know, the art piece that you're trying to produce. I like to be much more suggestive in my watercolor pieces, and that's really what it's all about with watercolor. Here I'm using my square brush to get into those narrower areas. This is what is so beautiful about the watercolor medium. The way you can very subtly layer colors, like here I'm adding a pink to the flesh tones, pink to the nails, being a bit bolder with the nails, but still with a very light hand. I am using a small round brush to get in those smaller spaces between the fingers and the ornaments. There's not a lot of room there, so you do want to use a smaller round brush. And I'm being careful to layer from dark to light. Doing that really makes a difference with how delicate and how three-dimensional and beautiful your piece will turn out to be. Here I am wetting the ornaments again and going back into them and adding even bolder colors. A bolder purple with more shadows, a bolder pink with more shadows in the areas necessary to give the piece some more depth. Again, I'm going in with the blue and making that bolder as well. I'm also going to do that with the yellow again. Here I am adding a little bit more color in areas where I feel it got a bit faded in the drying process. That can happen with watercolor. And here I am smoothing my marks a bit more just to make the texture, I'm really focusing on just making it a bit softer and not so rough around the edges. Here I am going in with titanium white and adding more brightness to the fingers and the hands and adding some extra color in the fingers where I see color is needed. After I painted the background, I did a few more touch-ups and just made sure that the colors were bold enough and some areas were defined that I wanted to be defined. Then I went in with a tiny brush and red paint and wrote Merry Christmas because this is going to be the front of my card. And this is the most exciting part about making a Christmas card, is when it actually starts to look like one. After you're done designing the front of your card, you want to go to your ironing board, get a cloth, lie it over the card, and iron down the crease in the middle so it looks like this. Then I flipped the card over and designed the inside of it retaped it to the table. This was all after I ironed it, of course. Then I wetted the surface, I wetted the paper again, and with a medium-sized brush, I went in and did some basic watercolor techniques to get the tree textures down. I wanted to make a very interesting little Christmas tree that was somewhat realistic, but also had kind of an expressionistic look to it. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. If you did, please like and subscribe to my channel, as it supports me and also you guys, and allows me to keep teaching you guys awesome techniques that you can learn and over time master. Thanks for watching.